Hey, what's up, everybody? We have a new YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe right now. Leave a comment on the video. Share it with your friends. It's also a podcast, 3 and Out, wherever you listen with me, John Middlekauff, Apple, Spotify. We have you covered, as well as thevolume.com. We have merch. Check out. I got 3 and Out hats right now. Thevolume.com. Search the podcast. Buy some merch. What is going on? Haven't had a chance to discuss, give some thoughts on the Chiefs trading L'Jarius Sneed to the Tennessee Titans out of nowhere this weekend. Not that he got traded out of nowhere. We knew he could get traded. It was shocking given that they're getting a 2025 third-round pick and just doing a pick swap this year in the 7th round. So they really get very close to what they would have got if they just would have played out this season and let him walk. I'll dive into it from my initial thoughts on the Chiefs and then thoughts on the Titans. Owners meetings going on this weekend in Orlando, Florida, and some things I think we can keep an eye on down there. And then just, we got to do a little draft daily. JJ McCarthy, a lot of hype, a lot of talk. I think I figured out his comp, so we will dive into that. But before we dive into everything, you guys know my close friends, business partners, and the official ticketing app of this podcast, Gametime. Go to your smartphone, download the Gametime app. The Gametime app allows you to go to anything. Professional sporting events, college sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, you name it. You a big festival guy, you want to get out and, cut a rug out on the grass or the dirt somewhere, they got you covered. Buy a pair of tickets, first pair of tickets, promo code John, John, save $20. Your team making a run here in March Madness, you want to go see them play, same thing. NBA playoffs, baseball, you name it, they got you covered. Gametime, promo code John, save $20. I think the most wow part of this trade is most people, including myself, thought that an all-pro, elite-level impact guy at a premium position would go for a lot. A late first-round pick, maybe a 2 and a 3. And then when I get a text message, he's been traded, I think it would have been Friday night, and then you look what he got traded for, it was pretty shocking. But it takes 2 to tango. Like, these guys have clearly a long enough track record of, they didn't just trade him for nothing for randomly. I think the market was pretty well established. The moment Detroit got Carlton Davis, they were kind of out. And then a lot of the other teams in the mid-20s or teams that, aggressive, quote-unquote, a player away, the Eagles spent all their money. Cowboys don't have any money. 49ers already have a highly paid corner in Charvarius Ward, right? Because ideally, if you're the Chiefs, you're not sending them to any good teams in the AFC. The Titans, now we'll get into them in a second. They got a major question mark at the most important position. But, that was kind of an easy one. And I think the pushback is, why didn't you just let him play out this season on the franchise tag? And I think the easy answer is they didn't want to deal with the drama. They didn't want to deal with a guy who probably wouldn't have showed up in training camp and probably just week 1 gets there and it gets a little weird when they have reinforcements. They did it with Chris Jones. He plays defensive tackle, and he's arguably, when he's on, the best or second best player at his position in the league. And honestly, when he's on, he's probably non-quarterback, a top 10 player in the NFL. So they did it. They weren't going to do that again. And they weren't going to ever give this guy an extension. Why? They have his replacement, Trent McDuffie. What did Bobby Axelrod say in Billions? What's the point of having FU money if you never say FU? Part of, once you start getting equity as an NFL franchise, you can do things where people go, what? Why'd you do that? The Patriots, Belichick, did it for 20 plus years. Everyone's like, this guy's a fucking idiot. And he just kept winning. As long as you got Andy and Mahomes, you can make a move that most people are going to disagree with you. Everything I saw on the internet, F for the Chiefs, F for the Chiefs. They didn't just give him to the Titans because they don't think he's any good. They've done a trade where they traded a Hall of Fame level player and they got a first and a second round pick. Clearly, they would have loved a first round pick. Not available. Not there. Now, the only thing you could argue is, why didn't you just let him play it out? Like I said, I don't think they wanted to deal with the headache. They want no part of that. The other thing is Snead has leverage here. So if I'm going to trade a second round pick for him, he's like, well, this is the number. The Titans were clearly the team willing to give him the most money. I'm going to make that educated guess as I'm doing this podcast here on Sunday night. I have not seen the contract. But if they're the team willing to give him the most money and some other teams very interested, and they're not willing to go remotely close to that, maybe in guarantees, maybe in years, whatever, like I don't trade for me. I'm not going to sign your extension. We talk about players all the time not having that much leverage when they get in the situation. It's not actually true. Because if the team is willing to trade you, which the Chiefs were clearly willing to trade him, he has some say in where he goes. Because if one team's offering an extension at $65 million guaranteed, 50, I'm just throwing out numbers. I don't know what it is. Let's just say 50. And another team's willing to do 38 or 40, like, yeah, I want that deal. I want that contract. So that actually gives leverage to the trading team. Because ultimately, if he would have hit free agency, he would have got a ton of money. I think there's a pretty good chance he would have got more money than the Titans gave him whenever that number comes out. But he wasn't truly a free agent. So I think what made this really complicated was simple. Chiefs didn't want him. He wanted a lot of money. And a lot of teams that you thought should have been aggressive weren't that interested for whatever reason. I've heard people say the medical stuff sure looked like he was pretty damn healthy last year. I just saw a stat like 65% of his snaps, he goes up against the best guy on the other team. I'm like, he's an elite player. But if you're the Chiefs, you go, well, we got this guy in the 4th round. He became an elite player. See ya. We have your replacement, Trent McDuffie, who we think can even be better. Just like Snead, when we let Charvarius Ward go to the 49ers, we had his replacement in Snead. This is part of being a good drafting team. This is part of having a team that you feel you have reinforcements in younger players. And part of having high-priced players, like they do now in Chris Jones, obviously makes an astronomical amount of money with his new deal. Mahomes makes a ton, is you have to recycle your 5th and 6th best players sometimes. It's not easy. The other thing is, and that people have reported this and tweeted it out, like they have some younger players that they're going to want to extend. Creed Humphrey, he ain't going anywhere. Trey Smith, they like a lot. Nick Bolton, pretty good, right? And they also want to be in position sometimes where they have a little wiggle room, maybe to sign a guy or two if he becomes available, later on when a guy gets cut, right? So you can sign a better wide receiver. So I think this gets back to, like the Patriots for a long time, you make tough decisions. Ideally, you would have liked to trade him for more. Clearly, they didn't just give him away because they just wanted him to be happy. He had some leverage. The offers weren't as great as most of us thought they would be. And they got rid of a potential headache. Not that he is currently a headache. They like him a lot. He's a good guy. He's been an awesome player. But this is ultimately a business. And when you want to get paid, the only way to get the business side, to get you some leverage, is to cause a stink. They just went through it. Remember Chris Jones walked in the Lions game with his 2 Italian mobster agents up in the box? Like, why wouldn't this guy do that again? He just saw it kind of work for Chris, essentially. So maybe the Chiefs just, we don't want to deal with that for a guy that is not worth the headache. And so we draw the line now. Do we get much? No, we don't get much at all, which sucks. Could we have handled this different? Maybe traded him last year, I guess. But this guy has been a stalwart on a team that won us 2 Super Bowls. So yeah, it didn't work out perfectly from an asset addition, but we're at the point, like I said with Axelrod, F you money. We don't care. We just won back-to-back. First team in 20 years to do that. And let's face it, are we the betting favorites in the AFC? Who are you taking over us? Lamar to beat us? We just beat his ass on the road. You remember that? Where he didn't do anything against us? What's going to change now? Herbert has no wide receivers. Josh Allen, half his team just got cut. We're going to be okay. So I think do they do this if they had never won a Super Bowl and they've just been really good the last 5 years and they're like the Buffalo Bills? Probably not. They would be getting eviscerated. But when you're kicking ass every single year, you can do things that a lot of teams go, what? The Bills couldn't have done this, right? The 49ers would have gotten destroyed if they did this. Having equity with the rings and the championships matter. And it allows you to kind of make an uncomfortable situation, just kind of go away. Yeah, we don't want to deal with it. Even if the value is really crappy, we don't care. Right. And I think from the Titans standpoint, this is a no-brainer. What, you can get this guy for a 2025 third? Yeah, you got to pay him a lot of money. But this is an excellent, high-end, winning player. This is one of the easiest trades they'll ever make, right? Assuming I don't know anything about the medical stuff, which, again, something's a little fishy. Usually a guy in the prime of his career, 27 years old, the level in which he plays would have been more valued, but for whatever reason he wasn't, and the Titans pounced. Like, they're not in position where they can turn down this deal, right? They have all this cap space. They didn't use it previously on guys like A.J. Brown, and now they're being really aggressive this offseason. And they've added, high-end, really good players, right? I don't want to, Tony Pollard's not really a Pro Bowl based on last year, but like that, he's a good player. Calvin Ridley, good player. Snead, high-end player. But, and they got this new young coach. They got a lot of positive vibes going right now. None of it matters if Will Levis sucks. Like, that's really the end-all, be-all. If Will Levis can't play, all this stuff is null and void. You can have the coolest fucking restaurant, the best location. If your food sucks, Godspeed. And that's the thing with Will Levis. He's sneaky kind of old. He just turned 25 years old. To put it in perspective, Lamar Jackson just turned 27. So it's not like Will Levis some spring chicken. And you have these pieces. Hopefully your team's better. And this guy's got a year tryout. Because if he does not play well this year and he lets them down, like, they're going to be in the quarterback market. If he does, let's roll with him and we're off and running. And we got a couple more years on a rookie contract. But to me, that's the question I have with the Titans. Is Will Levis any good? His junior year, I liked him a lot. I did. Obviously, his senior year was a disaster. The offensive coordinator, even bigger disaster. Last year, he had some moments where you go, God damn, there's a lot there. Obviously, the athleticism, the arm strength, and then you just see some meltdowns. So now you get an offensive coach who's your head coach, play caller. He gets, because of his last name, Callahan, you get one of the best offensive line coaches in the league in Bill Callahan. So you would assume their offensive line is going to be better. Here's the other thing about the Titans. They don't have a third-round pick, but they have a first-round pick, which is pick 7. A lot of people think that they're just going to get the best tackle on the board, Joe Alt. And they have pick 38. So if they hit on those two picks with Calvin Ridley, with Snead, with Tony Pollard, like, they've added a lot of talent in an offseason very, very quickly. But we've seen this before. Like, I thought the Jets had a lot of talent. Then Aaron Rodgers gets hurt and they have no quarterback and they have no chance. So if Will Levis is a bottom 10 guy in the NFL starter, they're going to win 6-7 games at best. If he's solid, if he can be a fringe top 15 guy, then yeah, they can compete for the playoffs. And this division's pretty interesting, right? Because most of us are going to pick Houston next year to win the division. Their roster is really talented. They have this young ascending quarterback that, based on his rookie season, was exceptional. Coach is a stud. Like, their team's better than the Titans. The Jags don't know quite what to make of them, but if Lawrence is not as crappy as he was last year, they have some talent on the roster. Like, they should be pretty competitive. But I would imagine the Titans kind of feel like they can compete with those teams. We're going to find out. And like I said, it all gets to the quarterback. If he's just a guy, none of this matters. And it's all about, well, what's your draft stack pick next year and who's in the draft at quarterback. If he's solid, then we're talking about a team that's going to be pretty intriguing pretty fast. And obviously the coach, which I don't know that much about. My buddy in the NFL that worked with him loves him. He's actually now on the staff. But, we'll see how good Brian Callahan is. If he's a good – I saw this thing the Colts tweeted out. They do a great job this time of year, their video team, putting videos out with Ballard and their coaching staff. Like, I'm betting on the Colts. Why? They got Shane Steichen. He's really good. Like, there's a chance Shane Steichen is like the next Shanahan McVay. LaFleur, like, just viewed as a guy going to the playoffs all the time. But it's all going to come down to Anthony Richardson. Is Anthony Richardson any good? Because if Anthony Richardson's good, then they're going to be a problem. If he's not, then they won't. Like last year, that magic with Gardner Minshew. Look at their schedule. So it's going to get harder and the pressure on this young quarterback that hasn't played. So this division actually typically is pretty boring to me. I find it pretty fascinating, and I'm very intrigued to watch these teams. But props to the Titans for getting a deal done and having cap space. This is part of having a lot of cap space. When there are moments when you can pounce, you pounce. And they did. The thrill and excitement of March Mania is here. And DraftKings Sportsbook, one of America's top-rated sportsbook apps, is giving new customers a shot to turn $5 into $150 instantly in bonus bets with any college basketball bet. North Carolina listeners, don't forget DraftKings Sportsbook is now live in your state. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code JOHN, J-O-H-N. New customers can bet $5 to get $150 instantly in bonus bets only at DraftKings Sportsbook with code JOHN. The crown is yours. The league meeting's happening this weekend. I think we're going to see a lot of the conversations that didn't come to fruition at the combine continue here. Now, we're not going to see them or hear about them, but that's what's happening. These GMs and these coaches that have had initial conversations either about trades, draft day trades. We had multiple teams now. The Bears are taking a quarterback at 1. The Washington football team, Commanders, taking a quarterback at 2. Gerard Mayo, the Patriots, keep saying, we are open for business. The Arizona Cardinals last week said, we have a blinking light open for business. I think there are going to be obviously the Chargers would love to trade back. Not all these teams are going to be able to trade back, right? It's just not possible. Not everyone, like a lot of people want to trade back, but these GMs always say it after the draft, like no one was there to move. No one was there to make a trade or vice versa. Like I wanted to trade up. They wanted to take the guy. So you can get in these situations where all 3 of those teams can't trade back, but Minnesota is clearly going to trade up with one of them. And I think right now, if you're Minnesota, you're trying to figure out, obviously, you know, Caleb's going 1. Do you feel pretty good that you know the guy going at number 2? Like if you know Drake May is going at number 2 to the Commanders, it's on you to do research. Like, do they like, what quarterback do the Patriots like? Do they not like any of these guys? Is this a reset year for them? You know the Cardinals don't need a quarterback, and the Chargers don't need a quarterback. So you got to try to figure out what the Patriots want to do so you can figure out this domino equation, right? Are they just going to take a quarterback no matter what? They'll just take Jaden Daniels? What if they kind of like your guy, JJ McCarthy? That's where I think it's a little fishy that everyone just thinks Minnesota likes JJ McCarthy. You never want it out that that's who you like, because when that's the case, sometimes you get jumped. So it's hard to believe everything you read right now, but what I know is at this meeting and the coaches' pictures come out. I never understand why coaches are missing from the picture. Someone DM me like, where's Sirianni? Where's McCarthy? Where's Tomlin? Like, your guess is as good as mine. I don't get it. Cool to see Harbaugh back in the mix, but some of the guys wearing tucked in shirts and looking all dapper. But I don't. I just know that all 3 of those teams, if they truly want to trade back, are not going to be able to. And Minnesota has to attempt to figure out what we can like pay the least, which we're obviously going to pay a lot, but how do we avoid paying the most humanly possible? If you want to buy something and whatever you want to buy, you're willing to spend 10 grand, but you're like, I'd probably go to 12. Like, but I would love to get it at 8, right? And that's what I think Minnesota is trying to figure out. And they also, until the draft comes around, maybe that they won't even. Like maybe their quarterback that they like, what if the Patriots take JJ McCarthy? And they like Drake May and JJ McCarthy, and they're both off the board at 3. So it throws them off, and they just kind of stand pat. That's why there's just a lot of unknown, a lot of people trying to feel each other out and withhold as much information as they can and figure out how they can get what they want which is human nature, paying the least amount possible. I think I figured out JJ McCarthy because he's easily the most polarizing guy right now in the draft world, right? Like, why is everyone talking about, and I'll be the first to admit, when I watched JJ McCarthy sitting on my couch, and I watched him a lot this year, obviously Michigan was really good, I never thought like top 10 quarterback. But I also was watching him in the lens like, could this guy right now play in the NFL and be really good? Right? Because that's, if you take Caleb Williams right away or Drake May. You want that guy to start immediately. Well, what if JJ McCarthy really is more of a redshirt guy? He started the last 2 years. He was 19 and 20 years old. And I looked at a lot of his workout measurements, like his short shuttle and some of his athleticism. I think his comp is Alex Smith, the 49er Kansas City version, who became a really, really solid player. And I think a lot of people are viewing, whenever you view a top 10 quarterback, you're hoping to hit a home run. You're hoping to get the next Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes. That's who, think of all these comps. Like, who's Caleb Williams? Patrick Mahomes. Jaden Daniels, he's the next Lamar Jackson. I've been watching football for 30 plus years. I've seen one Lamar Jackson. I've seen one Patrick Mahomes. Like, who's Lamar Jackson's comp? It ain't Michael Vick. Michael Vick couldn't slide. He got hurt all the time. Who's Patrick Mahomes' comp? Brett Favre? Guy won 1 Super Bowl. Mahomes already won 3. So, I mean, these comps. I was telling someone this the other day on the golf. We were on the golf range hitting some balls. So, the crazy part about the draft is when you make a comp, especially to a high drafted player. So I was like, I think this guy could be the next like Reggie White. Honestly, I see a little Patrick Willis in this dude. You're never like, I take this guy at 8, but he's probably like, solid 7-year pro, maybe, a fringe Pro Bowl guy for a couple years in the peak of his career. If you said that, it's like, why are we drafting this guy so high? But what if JJ McCarthy really is the mold of what Cousins was for a long time, what Alex Smith was before Cousins, kind of that mold? And you're cool with it. Like, that's kind of what you want. Now, Alex was taller than him. I think JJ's arm strength is better. But both of them, I think, Alex for a long time was the best game manager in the NFL. But if that's kind of JJ McCarthy's deal, he did it in Michigan. And if you're Minnesota, get him with this team. We already got good players for you to play with, right? We don't need you to go superhuman because just throw some slants to Justin Jefferson. He'll take it 50. Throw a deep out to Jordan Addison. We got some guys. We got a play caller. Alex Smith, his first couple years, really 4 or 5 years, was a disaster because his coaching staff and operation was bad. Well, once he got a high-level guy in Harbaugh, and then even when I worked for the Eagles, Andy wanted to trade for Alex Smith or sign Alex Smith as Michael Vick's backup. Loved him. So, if you view him through the lens of, I don't believe this guy's going to be the next Tom Brady, Joe Montana, but what if he just becomes a really good player for a long time? He also just turned 21 years old. So when I watched him on my couch and I went, I don't really see a top 10. I'm watching him in the lens of right now, put him. But that's not how any coach or scout worth their salt is looking at a guy who is young and still moldable and still think of yourself. If you're over 30 at 21 years old, you have a lot of growth potential. It's no different with athletes. Guys improve. And I think Minnesota would go, and this is why I think that there's so many people putting him there, of we just had success with Cousins. We have Sam Darnold now who can start this year. So JJ doesn't even need to play right away. So by the time he comes in, he's got a redshirt year, and then he can hit the ground running. And if this goes bad for Sam Darnold, maybe by the middle of the season, we can insert him and get him some playing time. So I think we're looking at this all wrong. Comparing JJ McCarthy to Caleb Williams as a prospect is dumb. He does not have the stats of Jaden Daniels. But when you focus on the future, right, the next 10 years, because if I'm drafting a guy in the top 5, and most people believe JJ McCarthy is going to go in the top 5, is this guy a multiple contract guy? Are we comfortable with the character, the football intelligence? Has he played in big games? Well, he has. Has he had a lot of pressure on him? Fuck yeah, he has. Has he been coached hard? Hell yeah, he had crazy Harbaugh all over him all the time. So I do understand where it's coming from, right? Now, I say this all the time. There is no such thing as a high floor. Just because your comp is Alex Smith or Kirk Cousins and not Mahomes, you can bust no matter who your comp is, no matter what your physical attributes are. So much stuff is out of your control. You need help at quarterback. Who's your play caller? Who's your offensive line? Who are your skill guys? Is your defense any good? How much pressure is on your team to win? How bad's your team? How much mental fortitude do you just have right away? Are you used to a lot of people looking at you? Obviously, coming from Michigan, which is basically NFL light. Like I saw, Michigan just hired this coach in basketball, and he was supposed to go to Louisville. And I was thinking and I understand Louisville is like, a blue blood basketball program, but Louisville financially can't mess with Michigan. Do you know how much more money the Big Ten and the SEC have than the ACC? Michigan just lost their head coach Harbaugh, who was making probably $10 million a year. So they take Sharon Moore. I don't know how much he's making. He ain't making $9 or $10 million a year. I'll promise you that. So they're saving several million on their football coach, and they're about to expand. They've never made more money. Louisville should not be able to compete with Michigan for a basketball coach. And I know he's a Michigan man, but even if he wasn't, all these people shocked. Like, yeah, I understand the draw of the job, but financially, if Michigan or Ohio State or now, Kentucky, like the SEC and the Big Ten money now is so much higher than these other conferences, it's not even close. So it's a long-winded way of saying JJ McCarthy, what if he's the next Alex Smith?